Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, EV Fast Charging, the Defining Moment, Navigating Economics, Industry Upheaval, and the Future of Network Build-Out. Hey, everyone. I'm Lauren McDonald with EV Adoption, and I will be your moderator for today. Really excited about today's topics and panel discussion. What we like to do today is before we get into the main session, we like to give people about 2 minutes or so to hop on. We know it always takes people time to navigate the Zoom technology and your calendars and stuff. So we're going to do one or maybe two quick sort of trivia polls. So let's bring up that first poll so we can pass the time with a little bit of fun and test your EV charging knowledge. All right, well, hopefully we can get the poll up here. Well, if we can't, I can actually just go ahead and ask it. And so we won't use the Zoom polling question. So I'll just verbally answer it. And by the way, today, what we want you to do is use the Q&A function to submit your questions. And in this case, respond. There we go. There we go. Our first question is, how many fast charging stations in the US have 24 or more charging ports? Is it 12, 47, 93, 127, or 152? And then the second one, since we have them both up here together, you get to answer both of them at the same time. What is the average ratio of fast charging ports to charging stations in the US? 1.7, 2.8, 3.6, 4.9, or 5.7? All right, I hear we've got some good responses coming in. And obviously, I'll give a little bit of a hint to people that are still working on it. Tesla, no surprise, actually highly influences the numbers up here and the answer to the question. But Kyle, what do you think? Do you think we got enough answers? Are we good to go on this and see how people responded?
Yeah, they're still flowing in, so I think I'll keep it up for a
Okay.
few more minutes and then a few more seconds, and then
Yeah.
I'll end
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's fascinating. I did the analysis last week, did a post. Anybody that saw it, you know what the answer is to the first one. But a particular company had 98% of these 24 or more charging stations. Everybody can guess who that is. All right. So the first one, how many of looks like 38% of you guessed the 47. And then the second, so literally, what is that? 70% of you thought it was either 47 or 12. The actual answer is 93. And Tesla has 91 of those. So only about 10% of you got that one correct. And then let's see, got to scroll for the second one is the average ratio. Actually, again, we stumped the audience here. The actual correct answer is 4.9, which only 6% of you got right. Most of you thought it was either 3.6 or 1.7. And again, the Tesla, which averages about 11 or so now, really changes the numbers. And since they have 2/3 of the number of fast charging ports in the country, that really ups it. If you take Tesla out, it's actually closer to the plus or minus 2. So, anyway, thanks for everybody for playing along with our fun here. Hopefully, everybody who's going to join, I'm looking at the numbers here, got really good attendance. So let's go ahead and kick it into gear. So we're going to meet our first panels here in a second. But before we do that, today's agenda really is we're going to, again, cover who our panelists are, meet our panelists, and then go into the conversation today around sort of the current upheaval in the industry, economics, the future of the industry. We've got a number of prepared questions, and then we're going to leave lots of time for audience Q&A. And then we're going to close it out with a little electric era update. So with that, let's go ahead and meet today's panelists. Right, there we go. So Quincy, why don't we let's just go round robin in the order of who's on the slide here, and let's go to you, Quincy.
Yeah, sure. Happy to kick it off. Hey, everybody. My name's Quincy. I'm the CEO and founder of Electric Era. Founded Electric Era after about a 7-year career at SpaceX, where I was a mechanical engineer. For those of you who do not know, Electric Era is an EV fast charging station provider. We specialize in providing EV fast charging services to car refill retailers like gas stations, convenience stores that are modernizing their business. Really excited to be here with the rest of the panel.
Nikita?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lauren. My name is Nikita Demidov. I'm a manager of energy strategy for Loves and Trillium family of companies. As some of you probably know, we have over 600 travel stops and convenience stores around the country. And I think we serve about 500,000 customers every day. So very familiar with the convenience store market. I've started with distributed energy for the company, thinking about kind of power aspects for it. And that led me to leading the EV initiative for the enterprise today. So very excited time and looking forward to this panel.
Great. Emma?
Hi, yeah, my name is Emma Wyma, and I'm the Clean Transportation Policy Engagement Specialist at the Washington State Department of Commerce. Commerce is where our state energy policy office is held, and my portfolio is all on the light-duty vehicle EV space. So everything from our incentives program to our charging funding opportunities, and then I'm also managing our utility side charging infrastructure assessment. So kind of span the gamut there, and excited to be here.
Great. Well, we've got a great panel today. And again, if you don't know me, I'm Lauren McDonald, CEO and founder of EV Adoption. We're an EV charging data and analyst firm, very active on LinkedIn. And many of you probably see a lot of my posts, especially around NEVI and stuff like that. We spent a lot of time tracking what's going on with NEVI. So with those intros, let's go ahead and dive into today's conversation. And we'll kick it off with our first question. Oh, that's right. Sorry. Before we do that, we actually want to understand kind of the demographics of who's on today, so we can actually potentially, tailor some of the answers or direction of the questions and stuff. But so if you'd let us know, if you're with an enterprise company, site host, station owner, from the academic research world, you're an automaker, OEM. Maybe you're on the investment side, government, or you're actually in the EV charging space as a technology provider, software, et cetera, or on the implementation side, or maybe you're a consultant that actually works with all the above companies, or if you're in none of the above, let us know. It's actually going to be kind of interesting to see the mix of who is on today. All right. So looks like, yeah, sort of not surprised. Oh, actually, so a lot of consultants. Interesting. So more than a quarter of you are consultants. A fifth of you are in the EV charging technology space. And then next group, about 1/6 or so, if my math is correct, are in kind of the enterprise site host perspective, and then a fair number of others. All right, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into our first question. So as we mentioned, obviously there's been a lot going on in the space recently. Everything with the Tesla supercharger team layoffs to some financial difficulties and challenges with a few companies in the EV charging space. And so, really what we want to dive into here with this first question with the panel is helping us think through this is, what are the key factors that you think are ultimately going to separate the winners from the losers in this market, kind of potentially in light of or despite of kind of the recent upheavals. And Quincy, why don't we go to you to kick kick this first question off.
Yeah, sure. I'll kick us off. So I think from my perspective, and certainly our thesis here at Electric Era is that if you're a retailer adding EV fast charging, the name of the game is revenue. Very importantly, as well as the cost of that revenue, and then probably most importantly of all is the repeatability of that revenue. So if you double click into each of those, in order to get revenue, you need lots of sessions, you need lots of drivers showing up. Drivers are demanding increasingly reliable charging services. There's an outcry of that online, and folks really want reliable solutions that just work. That creates driver feedback loops that ultimately post online and post favorable reviews, which causes more drivers to show up. So I think reliability is one key component of driving revenue, which is obviously key to financial health, and then site selection, actually getting the right locations installed. Obviously keeping costs down on that revenue, making sure your electricity costs are as low as possible and your maintenance costs are as low as possible is a really key part of that. We're a company that specializes in both those things. And then increasingly, we hear retailers asking about loyalty programs. These are folks that kind of want to replicate the gas station model and EV fast charging, which is pretty cool to think about. We're literally converting gas stations to EV charging stations across the country right now. That's fantastic news, in my opinion. And they obviously want to repeat kind of the successes they've had with rewards programs, loyalty programs, et cetera. So that's top of mind for our customers and what we hear every day.
Great.
Maybe
Why don't we go to you next?
I can just, add to Quince's point on, from our perspective, I think, in the end, people like to travel around the highways and they need places to stay, eat, take a restroom. And amenities, in my view, are really important for the EV drivers. It's something that today, it's not a lot of the stations that are located in the prime locations like Love's where they can go and get hot food and got hot dogs. And I think also importantly that, having a physical staff on site that can help you to guide through this charging experience. I think today we're in the early adoption markets where a lot of people really kind of tech savvy, but as we get into a more mass adoption market where some people may not really understand how to use EV chargers, and we know it from kind of a compressed natural gas experience that having physical staff on site 24/7 who's trained is super important to really improve the experiences of the customers that stop and charge.
Emma, any additional thoughts on this?
Yeah, I can't speak to the business model side of it. It's y'all's expertise, but I think Quincy hit it right on that customers need a reliable experience. That's what we see time and time again when we do surveys about how likely someone is to choose an EV or what their concerns are about EVs. There is still not a lot of knowledge around charging. There's still a lot of pushback. There's still a lot of confusion, and customers just want an experience, and consumers want an experience that feels very reliable and similar, and probably even more similar, more comfortable than feeling their car right now. So as much as we can do, I think on the state side to fill in some of those gaps with better public information, and filling those gaps will kind of help customers feel more comfortable making that. And in turn will make some of these other models successful.
Yeah, great. I want to sort of stick with this one a little bit in a follow-up question. Maybe I'll throw it to you, Nikita, to hear your thoughts on. I've been doing a lot of thinking about this lately, and you sort of touched on it. I mean, when you look at, for example, the who's winning either from the application side or the site host side with the NEVI program as an example, it's like the convenience store chains and the travel centers are dominating because of, they have all the amenities. They check a lot of the boxes that the states want and stuff. And so I'm curious though, if you think about the business model in the historical gas station, which became convenience store chains, right? Like there was some great data that came out from the National Association of Convenience Stores just like a month ago, where 2/3 of the revenue is from gas, but basically 2/3 of the profits are now from what's in the store and stuff. So do you think the future of the fast charging industry is really going to kind of mirror what happened with gas stations, and that even we kind of don't really call them gas stations anymore? I mean, because the pumps almost feel like secondary.
Yeah, I think we will be a little bit unique in this standpoint. I think, for common small gas station owners, you're absolutely right that most of the profits for them coming from convenience. For us, we also have, a big focus on trucking, right? And for us, actually, a lot of the revenues do come from fueling. And my performance is strictly judged based on how good is the fueling or charging business going to do. It's
Right.
absolutely looked separately from the way how the convenience store profit gonna do. And I think it's helpful because now I'm a lot more incentivized to make sure that those chargers actually up and running, to Quincy point, they're resilient and this is something reliable. And I think separating those aspects on like in-store sales and not judging my performance based on in-store sales, but based on actual, the revenues from the charging and the profits that we get there. And it's definitely a very different experience from a gasoline or liquid market where we used to deal with multiple suppliers. We have a lot of negotiation power. When you deal with local regional utilities that in some cases is the only kind of entity you can purchase power from, then the negotiation and the rate structure and the ability how you can manage your profits become a lot different. And that's what I think we as an industry are currently trying to really comprehend is how do we navigate that space that from a market structure and dynamic perspective looks a lot different from a liquid gasoline market that we used to, and how do we transfer the simplicity of gasoline market into the EV charging that it makes
Yeah.
it simple for a customer.
Yeah, that's interesting. So your perspective is that particularly you in particular, I mean, the profitability of the charging business is still going to be key, despite the fact that there's going to be a significant amount of add-on revenue. So yeah,
Absolutely.
makes sense. Yeah.
I'll jump.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry to just jump in there. I wanted to comment two things. One, I think also, retailers, convenience stores, gas stations, the fact that they have an attendant is actually a fantastic way to avoid vandalism. And everybody's frustrated by vandalism, obviously. Having just eyes on it 24/7 is a great way to avoid that. So that's the first comment. The second comment is just like to double click into the opportunity cost of low reliability. Like if you have a 50% charging success rate, if somebody plugs in and 50% of the time it doesn't work, basically most of the time those people leave, and that basically means you're losing 50% of your revenue. So I think this is a really important point for everybody in the space to understand is there's actually two distinct, really important parts of reliability. There's uptime. Is this station online? Is it operational? Is it functional? Does it have the connectors on, or did they get taken off? So that's just like basic uptime. And then the other one is charging success rates. When you plug in, does it work the first time?
Right.
That both of those things have to come together. And I think what I've seen in the industry is a lot of the former, a lot of focus on the former. And I'd like to, recommend as an industry, we think about expanding it and having those tough conversations. What's your charging success rate? What's your charging success rate? When you plug in, does it work? Great, it's up. But what about that second one? So I would really recommend folks think about that, because the money lost is huge. And that's obviously going back to the point of the question, the most important consideration in how to make this a financially viable industry.
Right. Yep. Emma, I don't know if you had anything to add.
No, I think both of you have hit it home really and can speak to more of the business model side of it.
Yeah.
Coming just from the space that the government is filling in, and what we're noticing is just finding a seamless experience for folks who are interested. We're in the early adoption phase, but we're going to be out of that soon. And I think it's the role of all of us to work together to figure out how to make that experience not stressful. And
yeah. One more follow-on sort of quick question. We'll take quick answers on this before we go to the next question. But 97% uptime. Good enough or too low of a bar? Quincy, let's go to you.
I think it's too low. I think if you think about the gas station model, I think I've probably, before I switched to electric, I probably filled up my car, thousands of times. And I think there was one instance I can remember in my entire life where the gas pump was not working.
Yep.
If you do the math on that, that's 99, let's say you did 10,000 times, that's 99.99%, right? That's charging success rate, not to even talk about just the operational, uptime of the pump. So I think like if we really, really want this industry to succeed, we need to just keep raising the bar. We need to keep going up, and we need to provide better and better services. So I love one thing I love about our team is like our whole team is bought in on extremely high reliability and extremely high uptime, and it's our number one focus area. And I'd love to see the rest of the industry adopt that same intensity.
Yep. I'm curious, Emma is sort of somebody that works in the government space. How do you think about like minimums? Because, and I'm sure most people have done the math, 97% uptime means the charger's down 11 days a year, right? And we wouldn't stand for that with our mobile phone service or, Amazon or something like that, or Salesforce, like whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can know how this was calculated and the goal set by it.
Yeah.
I think it's a floor. I hope it's a floor. I'd like to see it met first before going forward. I think
Yeah.
that's where we're at is we need to start here and make sure we can all meet this standard. I think if it's a government reliability standard, there's a lot of pushback, and I think this can get into a bigger conversation about, how much red tape more additional standards can cause. So I'd like to start with that 97% and let's see that first.
Yeah.
Yeah, moving forward, and obviously have it as a floor.
Yeah. That's great. Kyle, you can
And
go ahead.
maybe if I can just add one
Yeah.
more thing on the resilience standpoint, I think, we so used to kind of in the cases of, and me living in Houston, very familiar with hurricane now. I always think about what happens when the power, gets shut down on the grid, and how do we actually, now have a fleet of customers, fleet of cars that need to charge and cannot do it. Like in a gasoline, it's really easy, but with EV chargers, it gets a lot harder. And I hope, as an industry and the government, we start thinking about the resiliency of these chargers during those extreme weather events that allows people to evacuate from the places where it seems like more and more we start seeing having problems with power.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. Yeah, let's go on to the next question. That was great conversation. Thank you. The economics of EV charging are obviously really complex. We've already sort of talked about it, that there's not just the charging side of it, but there's potentially the add-on, but electricity prices, demand charges. We could spend a whole hour just talking about demand charges, and I do want to dive into that a little bit. Obviously, utilization rates, uptime, and government incentives. Like this industry fundamentally has been built on for the last 10, 12 years, government incentives. I don't know this for a fact, but I would say probably 90 to 95% of every charger in the US has at least some type of incentive involved in it, utility, whatever, local, et cetera. But putting that with that background, how do you see this mix of these different variables sort of playing out in the next 5 to 2 years? If you had to maybe pick one or two, what are going to be the key sort of fulcrum aspects of what's going to drive profitability? Nikita, why don't we start with you on this one?
Sounds good. I think, kind of the way I think about the EV charging is, of course, there's a capital investment that's really high, and government's help with that. That's kind of the issue solved, I would say, for now. And over time, I think the equipment will get cheaper, etc. But the problem today is that there are a lot of fixed costs, right, in running the stations, and you alluded to demand fees and setting up this whole network, etc. And the way how this fixed cost charge, from a demand fees perspective, is very tricky for a lot of commercial users that not used to deal with power. And I think kind of being able to manage energy in an efficient way and deploy the system, kind of try to be proactive with this, getting batteries, getting other things that really help to one, have a lower fees for you, and kind of as a result, hopefully pass it to the consumers, and also optimize your profit will be kind of the key aspects to get focused after this kind of 5 years past. The government incentives are not long in there, and then you need to start running, truly profitable business, and making sure that this is the equipment and the services that you provide for longer than just the subsidized period, right? That's something that you can generate the sustainable revenue and have a real business model there. So fixed fees will be the key aspect to manage.
Yeah, great. Emma, why don't we go to you if you have
Yeah.
thoughts on this? Yeah.
I like this question a lot. I think we can dive in on this one for the rest we have the whole time. I think I have 2 points on this, but one trend I feel like we're seeing is this push and need for standardization. I think a lot of charging experiences will start to look similar as fueling a gas car or an ICE vehicle looks right now. we're kind of trending in that direction. And I think the misunderstanding of charging or the unknowns about charging that we're seeing the general public have now will slowly decrease, and those will kind of go into the background as the charging experience becomes just as normal and standard across the state and across the country. And the next one is utility charging and utility need. I feel like that is going to be the biggest focus and in this next 5 to 10 year period, when we're starting to project how much drain this will be on the grid in certain parts of the state. And at least in Washington, we're focusing on projecting out the utility demand. And we're doing a study right now that will assess all the infrastructure costs needed to power EVs through 2035, since the vast majority of vehicles be battery electric or plug-in hybrids. And we just don't know what those costs are going to be and how we need to meet them. So those are the two things that I think we're, at least on the government side of where we need to be start focusing and funding, is funding utility and looking at managed charging and looking at policies that make it doable to charge all the vehicles that we're hoping come online in the next 10 to 15 years.
Yep, great. Yeah, Quincy?
I think it's like really important to note. I think that one of the most important aspects of what you listed out here is utilization rates. Charging asset utilization rates, and the leading indicator of that is EV adoption rates. Obviously, the more EVs are on the road, the more utilization a charging station gets. And from that perspective, I think the future of this entire industry is extremely bright. Despite the negative headlines recently, the EV adoption rates, what the data says is actually quite high still. I do not think that we're going to see a slowdown in EV adoptions, and in fact, I think we'll continue to compound at about a 30% annualized rate over the next several decades. So, what does that mean? That means that there's just going to be a lot of usage, and that means there's going to be a lot of revenue opportunities, and the people that provide the best services are going to capture that value. I think Emma's comment and Nikita's comment are really prescient in that the fixed cost is a big challenge. If you think about the future of the grid, I mean, the energy demand is expected to double through the grid as we electrify transportation and home heating, and it could go up to 3x. So no matter what way you cut it over the next, call it 3 decades, we're in for a lot of additional grid overhauls, and typically that infrastructural investment is recaptured by utilities in the form of demand charges. So I think we all need to be smart and think about what incentives to set in order to keep fixed costs low for operators. I mean, one of the solutions to that problem space that we've come to at Electric Era is just the use of a battery to keep demand charges low. I talked to a lot of utilities, and they really don't want to give up demand charges, as I'm sure folks on this call know, because of that fixed investment problem, right? So, adopting smart solutions that make the economics better is going to be a really key cornerstone of how to induce a profitable business unit.
Yeah, let's stick with demand charges for another minute or two, Quincy, because I think I certainly hear from a lot of people that oftentimes they view this as the number one hurdle to profitability, and hence why companies like Electric Era exist to help sort of mitigate that. But do you think that there's going to be and any of the three of you can jump in on this, do you think we're going to see demand charge reform? I've heard talk about that. New York State had that recently. It helped out in New York, but I've heard talk of some sort of middle ground, right, where there's like a higher flat rate or something like that. And if you have thoughts on the battery side of this will help from a technology perspective, but from a utility rate structure, any thoughts on where that might play out?
I'll just briefly add that I think it's going to be case by case. Certain folks, certain utilities, certain energy commissions will adopt one methodology versus the other, and I think it will just kind of average out to be a middling type solution that makes all parties decently happy. On the demand charge front.
Yeah.
Now, I think the other really important point is demand charges are only one of the problem with the grid and effectuating the business model. The other is just getting the power.
Right.
There's this great graphic online. It shows kind of like the power of various different things, and like a heavy duty truck, pulls at a megawatt or 2 or 3. It kind of depends on where the battery voltage, bus voltage ends up. But basically, what that means is that's 3,000 homes worth of power going instantaneously into one car. So the actual just grid infrastructure, getting it on site is extremely challenging. Transformer lead times continue to grow.
Yep.
They're extremely expensive. You know, a lot of folks that I talk to are really excited about using dynamic load management software and, you know, our battery systems as part of our charging station solution to keep that much lower. So you can both solve the demand charge problem and just getting the power there. You got to do that right, and it's a really challenging thing. But I wanted to flag that for everybody on the call because it's another really important variable to keep in mind.
Yep. Great.
I
Great.
can jump in with kind of
Yeah.
what I can't speak on behalf of utilities in Washington State, but for the ones that we've talked to, this is something they're very concerned and looking at because these lead times are so long to get infrastructure up and running and doable. There's a huge need of not wanting to pass those costs down to ratepayers. And if you're part of a commission or part of the UTC, there's an even bigger push to keep costs low, especially if we're in this early phase of if you're passing on costs just from EVs, are you making everyone pay for just early adopter folks who have EVs? I think there's a huge equity component to consider there. They're very much considering, you know, how we're going to meet this demand, and at least part of this study is kind of finding out what these costs are so that we as the government can ask the legislature and get funding money to pay for some of these infrastructure demands and meet some of those needs now, considering how long the lead time will be to get some of these to get infrastructure online.
Yep, yep. The interesting thing is that EVs play both sides of the fence, right? They're part of the demand challenge, but they're also part of the solution with, you know, ultimately vehicle to grid and you know, being able to basically, you know, vary what time of day you charge, pull in solar during the day. Like down here in California, we send we send like springtime, we send solar, we pay Arizona to take our excess power, right? When we should be probably charging our EVs during the day to take that excess solar and stuff. So there's a lot of things on that side that we can do. But in the interest of time, let's move on to the next question. Building out a comprehensive EV charging network, obviously, as we've discussed, is going to require a significant amount of investment from the private side, from the public side, but also, you know, automakers, utilities. Just as we said, like, you know, there's a lot of need. You know, Emma, you've talked about of utilities are, you know, sort of trying to figure out how they can support all of this. So, you know, it is going to be, you know, it's going to be a not just one entity is going to solve this problem, right? It's going to be a group of different players and stuff. So, how do we, you know, how do we see this sort of playing out as far as collaboration and potentially cost sharing? And Emma, this feels like this one's kind of right up your area and something that you probably think a lot about, right? Like how do we collectively as a society solve this challenge?
What an easy question. I think it does start with a conversation like we're having right now.
Yeah.
I think there's a huge need between government agencies who have control, or not control, but just can help lead the charge of funneling funding. It creates automakers who are going to be providing the vehicles, who are then going to create the demand, and then charging companies are going to make this all happen and do it well and equitably. I think the role that the government can fill at this stage of where we are with adoption is filling the gaps that industry is not naturally going to fill or has the ability to fill. I think it's our role on the state side, at least in Washington, we're very focused on equitable distribution of funding for EVs, recognizing that transportation costs are an enormous cost for a family right now. It is the number 2 cost of a family's monthly income or monthly costs. It's your home, your rent, but your second one is just transportation. And EVs provide such an equitable answer to some of these huge income issues. So I think I would say that's the biggest space that the government can fill, is saying, where are there gaps in the transition to transportation electrification that can't be met by industry, can't be met by automakers, that we need to step in and make sure this whole model will be successful to meet some of those goals that we have already set by the state or that's set federally, whether that's climate or energy goals.
Great. Nikita, do you want to jump in next or?
Yeah, I can, you know, just kind of add that I think, you know, creating the forums for collaboration is really important. You know, I never really have been at the utility conference until like 2 years ago. And I've seen a lot of folks like us who now attend those because they understand how important, those conversations are now. And, be really kind of used to deal with the different type of players in the industry. And as I emphasized in the beginning, that, the power market dynamic are a lot different, with public utility commissions and the rate setting regulations, etc. It's really takes, I think, creating the conversations and creating those relationships that help us to, move together as an industry, because it's really hard for the utility to, put new distribution or pull new transformers when they don't know when the load is coming. And for us, it's really hard to say when the load is coming if I don't know what the automakers are doing and what the fleets are doing, and kind of bringing all the players into one place is really important, I think, for us as an industry to keep going. And I think, over the last couple of years, I've seen a lot of more kind of conference popping up, and, different high increase in attendance on the places where these conversations are happening. I think it's good for the industry to understand that, each of the pain points, because we, even like in relation to demand fees, I would like to blame utilities for having the high fees, but they have it for a reason, right? They need to run the grid. I completely understand their pain point there. Just kind of talking through those and understanding how we can, together maybe sacrifice a little bit, but make a progress.
Yeah, we're gonna in a second we're gonna go to audience Q&A, but I know, Quincy, did you have anything to sort of add to this, or?
Yeah, just to jump off of a couple of Nikita points, I cannot emphasize enough how much the importance, the collaboration part and the communication part of this whole transition is to making it successful. And I think it matters immensely with the planning people and the policy people at the conferences, but as recently I've really come to appreciate how it matters on the implementation side as well. Like actually going and meeting a jurisdictional authority or a utility counterpart in the field and shaking their hand actually makes your process go a lot faster. So like getting to know these people, having those conversations, collaborating with them, it will help speed everything up. That's the only thing I'll add.
Okay, great. So we've got some great questions that come in. Only about 8 minutes left, it looks like. So let's dive in. The first question is around NEVI. What do panels think about the path to profitability for NEVI funded projects compared to non-fast financed stations? How fast do you see a NEVI funded station become profitable? Who wants to tackle that one? Nikita, Quincy?
Just say briefly, it depends on the utilization, but sorry, go ahead, Nikita.
No, yeah, I think you're right, because it's really depends on the region and utilization, right? It's the equation, in my mind, is pretty simple. It's your investment, then you have your revenue, and you have your cost, right? Probably 90% of the cost today will be fixed fees. So as you grow the utilization, that fixed fees amortize across a larger number of sessions, and the result, you're able to get to better profits. I think, the NEVI funds definitely help to have a low investment, but having low investment is not the ultimate, factor in deciding what project will be sustainable. It's actually putting it in the right places where people actually can use it, right? And, maintaining it for longer than 5 years. And that's what I think, the key hope I have is the whole program is that we don't just put, money into assets that after 5 years, they won't stand alone. I think longevity of the companies that receive funding and the ability to take it and then expand on it and make sure that the places that the government is funding actually will grow into a sustainable project that travelers across the country will be able to rely on for long term.
Yeah, and I'll just actually add something on that one of the things that, that when you think about non-NEVI funded, right, companies are using a lot of data and AI and everything like that to figure out where the exact price best location is to deploy fast chargers. But when NEVI says you've got to put it out in the middle of North Dakota, between North Dakota and Montana, those states are next to each other, where there isn't a lot of traffic, right? You need that 80% offset, right? So to your point, it's like, the money is nice with NEVI, but it also, the fundamental foundation of NEVI is let's get them in where they're not financially viable today. So that, that adds challenge. I don't know if anybody has anything else since we're getting close on time here to add on that. Otherwise I can move on.
I'll just briefly say, incentives play a huge role, and I think that's where the government can have a really outsized influence on inducing a profitable industry. Is really setting the incentives well so that profitability is the outcome. There's a great quote. It's like, "Tell me the outcome, and I'll show you the incentive." That is very true in this industry. So, agreed with all points.
Yeah, this next question is really interesting. We sort of touched on it earlier in the conversation around, I think, Nikita, about, just kind of how you guys think about this and from the on-site people. And I think actually, Quincy, you mentioned this, but the question is around maintenance. How important is it for charging providers to have on-site or geographically close maintenance teams? How do you think about repair timelines? Do you aim for same day, 48 hours, et cetera? Nikita, do you want to tackle that one, or,
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is as I think about where I spend most of my time today, it is on maintenance and figuring out what we can do to have the same level of uptime that we have with gasoline pumps. It's within 24 hours, any gasoline issue needs to be resolved for sure. And, when I think about the charges, we have in our network today with some of the other networks, it's takes them days just to send somebody out there. And then there's a lot of finger pointing on whose fault it is. And it cannot happen. We're trying to build up the system of very reliable partners all around the country and have backup to a backup and make sure that, within 24 hours, these issues are resolved and we can provide people a same success rate. And I like how Quincy defined it. It's really like somebody plugs and able to charge. I want people to know Loves as a place where they always can go for reliable charging experience.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think I think like maintenance can be less painful if you select the right solutions provider. So I would just encourage everybody on the call to ask your solutions provider how they're doing monitoring of the site. One of the approaches we took in our early days as a company was to have an on-site edge compute system, basically a computer on site that just monitors the station in real time and then send an alert out proactively if anything goes wrong. And that allows you to get ahead of the ball. That allows you to basically, let your network operations team respond to that problem before a driver ever discovers it. And you can use that proactiveness to boost your uptime numbers quite significantly, actually. So, real-time diagnostics are absolutely key. And then, a 24/7 network operations center. Like, these are pretty complicated pieces of equipment. I think it's like a extremely high voltage digital handshake. Like, it is kind of hard to do this well. And I really respect the people that put a lot of time and effort into this. And we found that diagnostics in real time on site with a computer and a 24-hour knock is a surefire way to boost your uptime numbers.
Great. I think we've got time for maybe one more question. Let's see. Emma, why don't we get a great question to you around the study you mentioned about our grid enhancing technologies being examined to avoid new transmission build out to meet the demand. Maybe you can talk a little bit further about what you're talking there.
That's a great question. It is being part of this study. We are looking at grid enhancing technologies. This study will project costs through 2035, and then even from 2035 to 2050, looking at operations costs after that. So looking at more of the capital costs until 2035. And I think that's going to be a big component of the grid, is looking at these grid enhancing technologies. We're really in the early phase of doing this analysis. We're not sure what that looks like, or else I'd be able to give you more. But we're just starting to get utility data now that we're compiling for Washington State to be able to do this analysis.
Great. So we promised 45 minutes, and I see by my clock 10:44. So I'm going to hand it. Well, first, actually, I want to thank thank Quincy, Emma, and Nikita for a great conversation today. I wish we had another sort of hour or more to continue this. We only touched on the surface of a lot of the topics, but and some great questions that came in. So we hope this was valuable to everybody. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kyle to close us out. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Great attendance and really great engagement in the Q&A and the chat. So appreciate it. If you're interested in meeting with us to discuss any sort of opportunities to partner, whether you're government or asset manager or a site host, we're happy to work with you. So feel free to use the QR code on the screen, or we can you can follow the schedule a call today to find a time to meet with us. And yeah, thanks again for joining, and we'll share out the webinar later. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye. See you.